Hello and welcome back to day 2 of Unit 9. It's all about quadratics again, so now we're going to throw in the word zeros and still be talking about the max, min, domain, and range. All right, so two new vocab words. Zeros are the x value that makes it equal to 0 or the equation equal to 0. It's also called a root or an x-intercept. Sometimes they also call it a solution. Okay. The axis of symmetry is the vertical line or x equals line that cuts the parabola in half. So if you look at a parabola, it's symmetrical. So the axis of symmetry is that line that divides it in half. If you know the zeros, it's halfway between them. So if I have a parabola here, if I know the zeros, I just find the middle of the zeros to find the axis of symmetry. And you add those two numbers up and divide by 2. If it's in standard form, it's a formula. It's x equals negative b over 2a. And that's going to be an important formula for you to know. And that's if it's in standard form. It should be a little 2. All right? So we're going to practice both of those. So the first thing is zeros. The zeros is where it crosses the x-axis. So this one asks you to draw a parabola with 2 zeros, meaning it has to cross the x-axis twice. The second one asks for just 1, meaning it has to cross the x-axis just once, and the third one is no zeros, which means it cannot cross the x-axis. And you have to think about a parabola. Those arrows go on forever. So if you're going to draw zeros, that's technically still going to hit the x-axis. So why don't you pause it and see if you can draw each example. So this one, I'm going to just pick a starting point right here and arc it up. It's just a sketch. So this one has 2 zeros because it crosses twice. And the vertex is -2, -4. And the axis of symmetry would be in the middle of those, which looks like it'd be right here at -2. Notice it matches the x-coordinate of the vertex. The axis of symmetry always goes through the x-coordinate of the vertex. If I want to draw just 1 0, that means I have to pick a spot on the x-axis because the vertex must be the point that hits. So there's my parabola. It's just a sketch again. The vertex is over 3 and up 0. Again, it has to have the vertex on the x-axis for it to only cross once. And the axis of symmetry again would be the x-coordinate of the vertex. If you look, that line x equals 3 is what divides the parabola in half. And the last one is no zeros, so that means I have to draw it. I could draw it in 2 different ways to show you 2 examples. One's going to be where it's completely above the x-axis and opening up. Or another option would be to go below the x-axis and open down. So I'm going to just work with this one up here. So the vertex of that one is left 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and up 2. So the vertex is -5, 2. And again, the axis of symmetry is the x-coordinate of the vertex, so it's where it cuts that parabola in half. So the axis of symmetry is -5. X equals -5 because it's a line. All right, and that's the last thing we're going to do with zeros. Now we're going to work more with the vertex, and instead of giving a graph, we're only going to be given an equation in standard form. So the first thing you need to do is identify your a value, your b value, and your c value. So a is the value in front of the x squared, so it's 5. B is the value in front of the middle term, x, so that's -10, and you must include the signs. And C is 3. If you remember, the equation we wrote down is -b over 2a. So all you're going to do is fill in -b. My b value is -10, so it's going to turn to a positive because 2 negatives turn into a positive, over 2 times a, and my a value is 5. So I get 10 over 10, which equals 1. What that tells me is the x-coordinate of my vertex. Notice it's an x equals equation. That's the part, if I draw my parabola, where it divides in half, it's crossing at 1. So the only thing we have left to find is our y-coordinate. here's a simple trick. Whenever you know the x coordinate, you can plug in for x into the equation and you should be able to get y. So I now am not going to write x here, I'm going to write 1 because I know x is 1. And same thing for this, it used to be negative 10x, now I'm going to plug in 1 for x. You can either do this in your head or use your calculator. So go ahead and do it in your head. I'm going to type it into my calculator. So it's 5, 1 squared is just 1, 5 times 1 is 1, but I'll type it anyway, minus 10 times 1, and then plus 3. Now this one should have been done in your head. It's pretty easy. So I'm going to hit enter and I get negative 2. And if I did that in my head, I can also do 5 times 1 is 5, minus 10 plus 3. 5 plus 3 is 8, minus 10 is negative 2. So just double check. What that means is this point right here is 1, negative 2. So go ahead and pause the video and try the same formula, negative b over 2a on this one. So your a value is 1, your b value is negative 4, and your c value is negative 10. And we don't use the c for the formula, but just for future reference, that's the y-intercept, or where it crosses the y-axis. We'll get into that later. So the formula is negative b over 2a. So I'm going to plug in negative 4 for b, which turns to a positive. I'm going to plug in 1 for a. So I get 4 over 2. 4 divided 2 is 2. Remember, that's my x coordinate because it's x equals. So all I have to do is plug it into the equation. So it originally was x squared. It's now going to be 2 squared minus 4 times 2 minus 10. So you get 4 minus 8 minus 10, which is 4 minus 18, which gives me negative 14. And we can double check that on our calculator if we like. Parenthesis, always use parentheses, so 2 squared minus 4 times 2 minus 10, and you get negative 14. What that tells us is this one is opening up with a vertex at 2, negative 14. All right, and try this last one on your own again. Notice this one doesn't have a c value. So a is negative 1, b is negative 2, and c is technically 0. They don't have to write it in there, but that's what it is. So it's negative b over 2a, so it turns into a positive 2 on top, over 2 times a, which is negative 1. 2 divided negative 2 gives me my x coordinate of negative 1. And again, to find the y, you plug in x back into the equation. So I'm going to copy the equation, negative x squared minus 2x, but instead of writing x, I'm going to plug in negative 1. Now a common mistake is to cancel these these two negatives out, but you have to square that first, and negative 1 squared is positive 1. So it's going to be negative 1, negative 2 times negative 1 is positive 2. So if you're doing it by hand, you get negative 1 plus 2, which is positive 1. If you're typing it in your calculator, here's how you have to type it. Negative parentheses, negative 1 squared. If you don't put parentheses around that, it's going to mess it up. Minus 2 times negative 1. And you get positive 1. This parabola, on the other hand, is opening down because of that negative in front. And that vertex is at negative 1, positive 1. All right, go ahead and try OYO's day 2 for homework, and I will see you tomorrow.